The stars had never looked so beautiful and yet so terrifying. Captain Jiho stood on the bridge of the eternal dawn, staring at the massive structure that had appeared from nowhere. It was not a ship in any sense he understood. The thing was 50 kilometers across, made of crystal that seemed to shift colors with every passing second. Blue, then purple, then gold. It hung in space like a jewel, silent and waiting. "Captain, they're sending a message," his communications officer said. Her hands shook as she worked the controls. "Put it through," Jiho ordered. He tried to keep his voice steady, but his heart pounded in his chest. This was it. First contact. Humanity had dreamed of this moment for centuries. The voice that came through was not a voice at all. It was something that appeared directly in their minds, clear and cold. "Greetings, humans. We are the Galactic Council. We have been expecting you." Expecting them? Jiho looked at his crew. They all wore the same confused expression. How could anyone expect them? Humanity had only achieved faster-than-light travel 15 years ago. They had colonies on 12 systems, but they were still so young in the cosmic scale. "This is Captain Jiho of the Earth vessel Eternal Dawn," he said carefully. "We come in peace." "We know," the voice replied. "We have watched your species for some time. You have reached the threshold. It is time for humanity to join the galactic community." 3 days later, Ambassador Heron arrived at the crystal ship. She had been Earth's top diplomat for 20 years, had negotiated treaties between Mars and Luna, had prevented 3 wars between colony worlds, but nothing had prepared her for this. The inside of the council ship was vast beyond measure. She walked through corridors that seemed to have no end, past beings that were so alien she could barely process what she was seeing. Things with too many limbs, things made of light, things that existed in ways her mind could not fully grasp. The council chamber was circular and enormous. Representatives from hundreds of species sat in rising tiers around her. She felt very small, very alone, very human. A being that called itself Velnath spoke. It looked almost humanoid, but its skin was silver and its eyes had no pupils. "Ambassador Hyeran, humanity has impressed us. You are young, but you show promise. Your species is aggressive, yes. Creative, yes. Dangerous, very much so. But we have dealt with such species before." "Thank you," Heron said, though she was not sure it was a compliment. "We are honored to meet you." "The Council has existed for 100,000 years, Velnath continued. "We represent 847 species. We maintain peace across 200,000 inhabited worlds. We offer humanity membership in this great civilization." Hyeran felt a surge of excitement. Everything humanity had hoped for was being offered. What would membership involve? Velnath gestured, and a holographic document appeared in the air before her. It was long, very long. Hyeran began to read, and with each line her excitement died a little more. Complete military disarmament within 5 years. Humanity would have no weapons, no warships, no means of defense. Surrender of all weapons research. Everything humanity had learned about warfare would be given to the Council. Population cap of 8 billion. Earth's population was currently 9 billion. That meant 1 billion people would have to die, or be prevented from being born. Mandatory sterilization of aggressive genotypes. The Council would decide which humans were too violent to have children. Earth government dissolution. Humanity's hard-won democracy would end, replaced by Council oversight. Prohibition of independent colonization. Humans could only live where the Council allowed. And finally, the classification. Ward species for a minimum of 500 years. "What is a ward species?" Hyeran asked, though she already suspected the answer. "A protected status," Velnath said. "We will guide you, teach you, help you become ready for full membership. Many species require this period of growth." "How many ward species have achieved full membership?" There was a pause. A very long pause. "That is not relevant to this discussion." Hyeran understood then. None. The answer was none. She looked at the document again, at the impossible demands. "I need to bring this to my government." "Of course," Velnath said. "You have 30 days to decide." Back on Earth, Chancellor Minho called an emergency session of the United Earth Assembly. The chamber in Geneva was packed. Representatives from every nation, every colony, every settlement watched as Hyeran presented the Council's offer. She did not hide anything. She read every condition, explained every requirement. The assembly erupted. Voices shouted from every direction. Some called for immediate acceptance. Technology, they said. Protection, they said. A place among the stars, they said. Others called it slavery. Surrender, they said. The end of humanity as they knew it, they said. Dr. Sunhee sat in her lab beneath Seoul, ignoring the chaos above. She was a xenobiologist, had spent her career studying alien life in theory. Now she had access to real council data, transmitted as part of the offer. She read through files, through records, through histories spanning millennia, and she found the pattern. 72 species had joined as ward species. 72 had seen their populations shrink, their cultures fade, their identities dissolve. 23 had been forced into extinction after resisting council mandates. 49 remained as wards after thousands of years, never advancing, never achieving full membership, trapped in an endless cycle of subservience. She grabbed her phone and called Chancellor Minho directly. "Sir, you need to see this. The council is not what they claim." While Sunhee analyzed data, Colonel Daehyun worked in the shadows. He ran military intelligence, and his job was to know things others did not. He sent Agent Nari into deep space with a mission: hack council systems, learn their secrets, find their weaknesses. Nari was good at her job. She was very good. She infiltrated council networks through a dozen proxies and backdoors. What she found made her blood run cold. The council kept detailed files on every species. Humanity's file was marked with red symbols she had learned meant high threat level. There were contingency plans, invasion protocols, pacification procedures. She read about 3 worlds that had refused council membership in the last century. Their names were preserved in the records. Their civilizations were not. The council had glassed those worlds, burned them until nothing lived. They called it maintaining galactic peace. Nari transmitted everything back to Earth in encrypted bursts. On the 30th day, a new fleet arrived in Sol system. 200 warships, each one larger than anything humanity had built. They formed a blockade around Earth, around Mars, around Luna. The commander's message was simple and direct. Your time is up. Accept the council's generous offer, or we will bring peace to your system. Chancellor Minho stood before the United Earth Assembly. Every human alive watched this moment on screens, in implants, through every form of media. He held the council's offer in his hand. He held humanity's future in his heart. For 300,000 years, he said, humans have faced extinction. Ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters. We have always survived by one principle. We choose our own path. We bow to no one who does not earn our respect. We surrender to no one who demands our submission. He looked at the camera, at every human watching. The council offers us survival at the cost of everything that makes us human. I say we take the vote. Let every person decide. Do we live as slaves or do we die as free beings? The vote took 6 hours. When it finished, the results appeared on screens across all human space. 62% for rejection. Humanity had chosen freedom. Humanity had chosen death, if death was the price. Ambassador Hiron returned to the council ship one last time. She stood before Velnath and the assembled representatives of 847 species. She spoke clearly, with no hesitation, no regret. Humanity rejects your offer. We will remain free or we will cease to exist. Those are the only options we accept. The chamber fell silent. The council fleet remained in position, a steel noose around humanity's throat. 200 warships hung in the darkness of space like predators watching wounded prey. On Earth, people looked up at the night sky and knew their time was running out. The council had given humanity 1 week to reconsider. 1 week to choose slavery over extinction. Colonel Daehyun did not sleep anymore. He worked from a bunker 3 kilometers beneath the surface of Luna, coordinating intelligence operations across human space. His screens showed data streams from 100 sources. Agent Nari was still deep in council territory, still sending information, still risking her life every second. Her latest transmission made Daehyun's hands clench into fists. She had found the archives, the real ones, not the sanitized versions the council showed to potential members. Species after species, the same pattern repeated. Join as a ward, accept limitations. Watch as your population was slowly reduced through mandatory sterilization programs. Watch as your culture was labeled primitive and erased. Watch as your best and brightest were taken away for education and returned changed, compliant, hollow. And if you resisted? Daehyun looked at the images Nari had sent. 3 worlds turned to glass. Continents melted into radioactive slag. Oceans boiled away. Cities that had stood for thousands of years reduced to shadows on scorched stone. The council called it pacification. Daehyun called it genocide. He forwarded everything to Dr. Sun-hee. She needed to see this. Everyone needed to see this. Sun-hee sat in her lab surrounded by holographic displays. She had been analyzing council data for 6 days straight, fueled by coffee and determination. Her assistant had begged her to sleep. She had refused. There was no time for sleep. Humanity's execution date was approaching. The data told a story the council did not want anyone to know. Of the 49 species currently classified as ward species, the oldest had been in that status for 12,000 years. 12,000 years of waiting for full membership that would never come. Their populations had decreased by an average of 70%. Their technological advancement had frozen at whatever level they had achieved when joining. They were not protected. They were prisoners. Sun-hee found something else in the data, something that made her stomach turn. The council specifically targeted aggressive species, not the peaceful ones, not the diplomatic ones. They sought out species like humanity, species with warrior cultures, species that might one day challenge council dominance. They offered these species a choice between submission and extermination. Most chose submission. A few chose extermination. None had ever fought back and survived. She picked up her phone and called Chancellor Minho. "Sir, I have something you need to see. Something that changes everything." While Sun-hee analyzed and Daehyun coordinated, Admiral Taejun prepared for war. He stood in a shipyard hidden in the Oort cloud, so far from the sun that Earth was just a bright star in the distance. Around him, ships were being assembled, not the exploration vessels humanity had built before, not the colony ships or cargo haulers. These were warships, and they had been under construction for 20 years. Project Valkyrie had begun long before the council arrived. Some of Earth's leaders had looked at the stars and wondered, what if we are not alone? What if whoever is out there is not friendly? What if we need to fight? Those questions had been dismissed as paranoid by many. Admiral Taejun had not dismissed them. He had prepared. Now 300 warships hung in the darkness, invisible to council sensors. They were smaller than council vessels, faster, more maneuverable. They carried weapons the council had never encountered, because the council had not innovated in 10,000 years. Antimatter bombs, relativistic kinetic weapons, nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers, AI-guided swarm missiles, quantum entanglement communication systems that could not be jammed. Engineer Soman walked beside Taejun, her tablet displaying ship status reports. "We are ready, Admiral. Not as ready as I would like, but ready enough." "Will it be enough to win?" Taejun asked. Soman was quiet for a moment. "No, but it will be enough to make them bleed. It will be enough to show them that destroying humanity comes with a price." Back on Earth, the United Earth Assembly was in chaos. Senator Kyung-ho stood at the podium, his voice rising above the shouting. "We can reconsider. We can tell the council we made a mistake. Survival is not slavery. It is wisdom." Senator Yoonji rose to respond, her face hard as stone. "You call it wisdom. I call it cowardice. Our ancestors died so we could be free. Millions of them, across thousands of years. Are we now going to throw away everything they sacrificed? Are we going to spit on their graves and put chains on our children? Better chains than extinction," Kyung-ho shouted back. "Is it?" Yoonji asked quietly. "Is it really better? Ask the 49 ward species who have been slaves for thousands of years. Ask the 23 species the council erased when they dared to resist. Oh wait, you cannot ask them. They are dead, exterminated for the crime of wanting to be free." The assembly dissolved into shouting again. Chancellor Minho let them argue. Democracy was messy, but it was theirs. He would not silence voices even now, even with extinction approaching. That was what made humanity different from the council. In the council flagship, Commander Rathmill reviewed the tactical situation. He was a military officer of significant experience, had fought in a dozen wars, had pacified 5 rebellious worlds. Humanity would be no different. They were young, aggressive, and foolish. They had rejected the council's generous offer. Now they would face the consequences. His intelligence officers reported that Earth had some military capability. 87 warships, primitive fusion drives, railguns, and missile systems. Nothing that could threaten council shields. Nothing that could penetrate council armor. The humans would fight, certainly. Young species always did. They would die bravely. And then the Council would place a more compliant government in charge of the survivors. It would take perhaps 6 hours to destroy Earth's military, another 2 days to pacify the orbital stations and lunar colonies. Then the occupation would begin. Simple, clean, routine. Rathamiel had no idea what was coming. Agent Nari had been in Council space for 8 days now, living on stolen rations, moving through maintenance tunnels, hacking terminals whenever she found them unguarded. She was exhausted, terrified, and more determined than she had ever been in her life. She had one more job to do before she tried to escape. She needed to plant a virus, not a destructive one. Colonel Daehyun had been very specific about that. The virus would not damage Council systems. It would not delete data or disable ships. It would do something far more dangerous to the Council. It would broadcast truth. Nari found a primary network node in a service corridor. Her hands shook as she worked, connecting her device to the Council's systems. If she was caught now, there would be no mercy. The Council did not take prisoners, not when dealing with spies. The upload took 40 seconds. It felt like 40 hours. When it finished, Nari disconnected and ran. She had to get off this ship. She had to get back to human space. She had to survive long enough to see if humanity survived. The virus spread through Council networks like wildfire through dry grass. It did not trigger alarms. It did not appear on security sweeps. It simply waited, dormant and patient, for the right moment. On Earth, people said goodbye to each other. Parents held their children. Lovers embraced. Friends shared final drinks. Everyone knew what was coming. The Council's deadline was 1 day away, and humanity had not changed its answer. War was inevitable now. Captain Jiho gathered his crew on the Eternal Dawn. Most of them were young, in their 20s and 30s. They had joined the space service to explore, to discover, to see wonders. Now they would fight and probably die. Jiho looked at each face and saw fear, yes, but also determination. "I will not lie to you," he said. "We are probably going to die tomorrow. The Council has ships we cannot match, weapons we cannot counter, experience we do not possess. But we have something they do not have. We have nothing to lose. We have already accepted death. That makes us the most dangerous opponents they have ever faced." A young pilot named Bora raised her hand. "Captain, is it really worth it? Dying for freedom instead of living under the Council?" Gio thought about that. He thought about the Ward species trapped for thousands of years. He thought about the children who would never be born because the Council deemed them too aggressive. He thought about humanity's long history of fighting for the right to be human. "Yes," he said simply, "it is worth it. And maybe, just maybe, we will not die. Maybe we will win. But even if we lose, we will make sure the galaxy remembers that humanity did not go quietly." Chancellor Minho stood on the balcony of the assembly building and looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, the Council fleet waited. Somewhere up there, Admiral Taejun prepared his hidden ships. Somewhere up there, the fate of humanity hung in the balance. He thought about his daughter, safe in a bunker beneath the Pacific. He thought about all the children of Earth, waiting to see if they would have a future. He thought about the impossible choice humanity had made. Tomorrow the war would begin. Tomorrow they would. The deadline arrived with the cold precision of mathematics. At exactly 0 hour, Commander Rathmiel sent a final message to Earth. His words were broadcast across every human channel, reaching every settlement from Earth to the furthest colony. "This is your last chance. Submit to the Council or face the consequences. You have 1 hour." Chancellor Minho stood in the assembly chamber. Every representative was present. Every human world was connected. The vote had already been taken, but Minho asked again anyway. Democracy demanded it. Does anyone wish to change their vote? Does anyone wish to accept the Council's terms? Silence filled the chamber. Not a single hand rose. Not a single voice spoke. Humanity had made its choice, and humanity would stand by that choice. Minho nodded slowly. He activated the communication link to the Council flagship. "Commander Rathmiel, this is Chancellor Minho of Earth. Our answer has not changed. Humanity rejects your terms. If you must attack us, then attack. But know that we will not surrender. We will not submit. We will fight until we cannot fight anymore." Rathmiel's response was cold. "So be it. Your extinction begins now." The Council fleet moved forward. 200 warships activated their weapons. Energy signatures spiked across the electromagnetic spectrum. Their target, Earth's defense fleet positioned between the enemy and the home world. Captain Jiho watched the enemy approach on his displays. The Eternal Dawn hung in space alongside 86 other human vessels. They looked so small compared to the Council ships. Like children facing giants. Like moths flying toward a star. "All ships, this is Captain Jiho," he transmitted. "Hold formation. Wait for Admiral Taejun's signal. Remember, we are not trying to win. We are trying to survive long enough for the real fight to begin." The Council ships opened fire. The void lit up with energy beams and plasma bolts. Human ships scattered, their smaller size making them harder to hit. But not hard enough. The first human vessel died within seconds, its shields collapsing under weapons fire, its hull torn apart by energies that could melt planets. Then another ship died, and another. Human captains screamed orders. Crews fought desperately, but it was not enough. The Council ships were simply too powerful. Jiho watched his tactical display as red icons blinked out one by one. Each icon represented a ship. Each ship held 300 people. The mathematics of genocide played out in real time. "Captain!" his weapons officer shouted. "We are in range. All ships," Jiho transmitted. "Activate the surprises. Let us show them that humans can fight back." What happened next would be discussed in military academies for centuries. The human ships stopped running. They turned and charged directly at the Council fleet. It looked like suicide. It was suicide. But it was suicide with a purpose. Each human ship carried antimatter bombs in their cores, crude weapons, unstable, dangerous, the kind of weapons a species built when they were desperate and angry and had nothing to lose. The human ships accelerated to their maximum speed and dove into the Council formation. Then they detonated. 12 human vessels became 12 miniature suns. The explosions tore through space with the fury of dying stars. Council ships that had never known damage found their shields overwhelmed. Hulls buckled. Systems failed. 4 Council ships died instantly. 8 more suffered critical damage. Commander Rathmiel stared at his displays in shock. What had they done? Who sacrificed ships like that? Who used their own crews as weapons? The answer was simple. People who had already accepted death. But humanity's surprises were not finished. From the Oort cloud, from the darkness beyond the solar system's edge, 300 new ships emerged. Admiral Taejun's hidden fleet, built in secret over 20 years, equipped with weapons the Council had never seen. "All Valkyrie units," Taejun transmitted. "Execute attack pattern Delta. Show them what innovation looks like." The hidden fleet attacked with weapons that broke every rule of civilized warfare. Kinetic kill vehicles moving at 95% of light speed. The Council's computers could not track them. Their shields could not stop them. Metal moving that fast did not need explosives. Pure kinetic energy was enough. 3 Council ships died before they knew they were under attack. Then came the swarm missiles. Thousands of them, each one guided by an artificial intelligence that learned and adapted in real time. The Council tried to shoot them down. For every missile destroyed, 3 got through. They struck weak points, found gaps in shields, exploited system vulnerabilities. Nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers fired from 1,000 different angles. Quantum-entangled communication systems meant human ships could coordinate faster than Council ships could jam their signals. The Council fleet found itself fighting an enemy that should not have been able to hurt them, but was doing exactly that. On Earth, Coordinator Jiwon watched the battle from a command center deep underground. Her job was to keep humanity alive, to evacuate cities, to save who she could. She watched the tactical displays as icons moved and died, both red and blue. "We are losing ships," her assistant said. "But we are taking them with us," Jiwon replied. "Every Council ship we destroy is one less that can glass Earth." She turned to her team. "Continue evacuations. Priority 1, children. Priority 2, genetic archives. Priority 3, everyone else. If Earth falls, humanity continues on Mars, on Luna, in the colonies. We do not let our species die." In space, the battle raged. Captain Jiho had survived the initial exchange by pure luck. The Eternal Dawn was damaged, bleeding air from 3 decks, running on backup power, but it was still fighting. "Target that cruiser," Jiho ordered. "Fire everything we have." The ship shuddered as railguns fired. Solid metal slugs moving at hypersonic speeds hammered against Council shields. Alone, they did nothing. But the Eternal Dawn was not alone. 16 other human ships focused fire on the same target. The Council cruiser's shields flickered, failed, and then the hull was exposed. Railgun slugs tore through armor like paper. The cruiser exploded in a brilliant flash. Jiho allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. One more down. Only 193 to go. But the cost was terrible. Admiral Taejun watched from the Indomitable as his fleet was slowly ground down. Human ships were faster, more innovative, more desperate. But Council ships were stronger, more experienced, more numerous. For every Council ship destroyed, humanity lost 3. The mathematics were brutal and simple. At this rate, humanity would run out of ships before the Council did. Admiral, his tactical officer, reported, "We have lost 57 ships. The Council has lost 42. Taejun nodded. Not good enough. They needed to change the equation. They needed to do something the Council would never expect. Transmit orders to all ships, Taejun said. We are switching to Plan Omega. Plan Omega was insane. It involved using Earth's moon as a gravity slingshot to accelerate a dozen ships to speeds the Council could not match, then sending those ships not at the Council fleet, but past it. Their target, the Council command ship itself. 12 human vessels broke from the battle and accelerated around Luna. The moon's gravity added to their velocity, hurling them forward like stones from a sling. They moved so fast that relativistic effects began to matter. Time slowed for their crews. Space compressed before them. Commander Rathmil saw them coming. He ordered his ship to move, but it was too large, too slow. The human ships were not trying to ram him. They were firing as they passed, pouring every weapon they had into his shields at point-blank range. The command ship's shields held, but just barely. Alarms screamed across the bridge. Rathmil stared at the damage reports in disbelief. A ward species should not be able to do this. A young species should not be capable of such tactics. Who were these humans? While the space battle continued, Agent Nari activated the final phase of her mission. Deep in Council networks, the virus she had planted awakened. It did not destroy data. It broadcast it. To every Council species. To every ward species. To every being in Council space. The truth about ward species. The genocide of the 23 rebellious worlds. The suppression of innovation. The artificial limits on population and culture. The lie that ward status was temporary. All of it exposed. On 1,000 worlds, people saw the broadcasts. On 1,000 worlds, they began to question. On 1,000 worlds, the Council's authority began to crack. On Earth, the first orbital strike got through. Melbourne disappeared in a flash of light. 4 million people died instantly. Then Cairo was hit. 3 million gone. Coordinator Jiwon watched the reports and felt tears on her face. But she did not stop working. Could not stop working. There were still 7 billion people to save. Medic Dong-Yun worked in an underground hospital as the wounded began arriving. Burns from radiation, injuries from collapsing buildings, trauma from seeing the world end. He worked until his hands shook, until he could barely stand, and then he worked some more. In space, the battle reached its crescendo. Both sides were exhausted. Both sides had taken terrible losses. But neither side would retreat. Captain Jiho made a decision. The Eternal Dawn was dying. Shields gone, weapons nearly depleted, hull breached in a dozen places. He could retreat, save his crew, run to fight another day, or he could do what humans did best. He could refuse to surrender. All hands, he trained. The Battle of Sol raged for 3 days. 3 days of fire and death in the void between planets. 3 days that would be remembered as long as humans existed. Captain Jiho's sacrifice had been the first of many. Across the battlefield, human crews made the same choice he had made. They chose to matter. They chose to hurt the enemy, even if it cost them everything. By the end of the first day, the Council fleet had been reduced from 200 ships to 153. The human fleet had been reduced from 387 ships to 112. The mathematics still favored the Council, but the gap was closing. Engineer Soman worked without sleep in the orbital shipyards above Mars. Her team was performing miracles, repairing damaged ships in hours instead of days, rearming depleted weapons, keeping the fleet alive. Every ship that returned to battle was one more chance for humanity to survive. How many can we save? Admiral Taejun asked her over the communication link. Not enough, Somin admitted. But more than the Council expects. They think we are finished. They think we will break. They do not understand that we already broke ourselves by choosing this. Nothing they do can hurt us worse than what we were willing to accept. On Earth, the situation was desperate. 5 cities had been destroyed by orbital strikes, 17 million people dead. The sky above major population centers was filled with debris from destroyed ships, human and council both. At night, the orbital battles looked like new constellations being born and dying. Coordinator Jiwon had evacuated 4 billion people to underground shelters. Another 2 billion were off-world, scattered across the colonies. But that left 3 billion still exposed, still vulnerable. She worked with her team to prioritize who could be saved and who could not. It was the worst job in human history. "Ma'am," her assistant said quietly. "Tokyo is requesting evacuation assistance. They have 30 million people and nowhere to put them." Jiwon looked at her screens at the limited resources she had left. "Tell them to move everyone into the subway systems. Seal the entrances. It will not save them from a direct hit, but it might protect them from the radiation." In the Council flagship, Commander Rathmil was learning a terrible lesson about humanity. They did not fight like civilized species. They did not follow the rules. They used tactics that were considered barbaric, weapons that were considered excessive, and strategies that were considered insane. And it was working. His fleet was being dismantled piece by piece. Not defeated, not yet, but hurt badly. Hurt in ways that should not be possible. 17 of his captains were dead. 42 ships destroyed. His own flagship had taken damage that would require months in a shipyard to repair. "Commander," his tactical officer reported, "intelligence indicates the humans have a secondary fleet hidden in deep space. We do not know its size or capabilities." Rathmil felt something he had not felt in a long military career. Fear. Not fear of death, but fear of failure. If he could not defeat these primitive humans, what did that say about the Council? What did that say about 10,000 years of assumed superiority? "Intensify the orbital bombardment," he ordered. "Break their will. Make them understand that resistance is futile." But humanity's will had already been broken by their own choice. They had chosen death over submission. Everything after that choice was just details. Colonel Daehyun had not left his command center in 5 days. He coordinated spy networks across Council space, tracked enemy movements, analyzed their tactics, and he planned his own operation. One so dangerous that even he thought it was probably impossible. "Agent Nari," he transmitted on an encrypted channel, "I have a mission for you. It requires you to infiltrate the Council flagship itself." Nari's voice came back tired but determined. "What do I need to do?" "Plant a device in their central computer core. Something that will give us access to their tactical network. If we can see what they see, we can predict their movements." "That is a suicide mission, sir." "I know," Daehyun said quietly. "I would not order you to do it. I am asking if you will volunteer." There was a long pause. Then Nari laughed, a sound without humor. "I have been volunteering to die for 5 days now." "What is one more day? Send me the specifications." While Nari prepared for her mission, Dr. Sunhee made a discovery that changed everything. She had been analyzing Council ship movements, looking for patterns. What she found was both disturbing and hopeful. The Council fleet was receiving orders from multiple homeworlds, and those homeworlds were arguing. The broadcasts Nari had sent were causing chaos in Council space. 17 species were refusing to send reinforcements. 8 were demanding an immediate ceasefire. 3 were threatening to leave the Council entirely if the attack on humanity continued. Sunhee called Chancellor Minho immediately. "Sir, the Council is fracturing. If we can hold out long enough, they might withdraw on their own." "How long is long enough?" Minho asked. "Days, maybe weeks." Minho looked at the casualty reports on his desk. 17 million dead, and the number kept growing. "We may not have weeks, but we will do what we can." In space, Admiral Taejun prepared his most desperate gambit yet. He had 112 ships left. The Council had 153. The human ships were faster and more innovative, but the Council ships were stronger. In a direct fight, humanity would lose, so Taejun would not fight directly. He would do something the Council had never experienced in their 10,000 years of warfare. He would go on the offensive, not against the fleet, against the Council itself. "Prepare jump drives," he ordered. "We are taking the fight to them." His officers stared at him in shock. "Sir, that is madness. We cannot attack Council homeworlds." "That would be genocide?" Taejun interrupted. "Yes, if we were planning to destroy them. But we are not. We are planning to scare them." "There is a difference," he explained the plan. 30 ships would remain to defend Earth. The rest would split into strike groups and jump to Council space, not to destroy worlds but to prove they could. To show the Council that if humanity died, the Council would bleed with them. Captain Hyun-soo commanded one of the strike groups. She was young for a captain, only 32, but she had survived 3 major battles and lost count of the smaller ones. Her ship, the Defiant, led 5 other vessels through jump space toward a Council homeworld. They emerged from the jump at the edge of a star system. Before them hung a planet of incredible beauty. Blue oceans, green continents, cities that glowed like jewels. Home to 4 billion Council citizens, undefended because the Council had never imagined anyone would attack them here. All ships, Hyun-soo transmitted. Lock weapons on military installations only. We are not murderers. We are messengers. The human ships fired on orbital defense platforms, shipyards, military command centers. Precision strikes that did enough damage to make the point without killing civilians. The message was clear. Humanity could reach the Council's throat anytime they wanted. Then Hyun-soo broadcast on all frequencies. This is Captain Hyun-soo of the Earth vessel Defiant. We did not want this war. You forced it upon us. But understand this. If you destroy Earth, we will visit every Council world. We will make you feel what we feel. We will show you that extinction comes for everyone. Then the human ships jumped away before the Council could respond. They repeated this pattern at 16 Council homeworlds, not attacking civilians, not destroying cities. Just proving capability, just showing teeth. The effect was immediate. Panic spread through Council space. Their leaders had promised safety, had guaranteed protection. Now human ships appeared in their skies and that promise was revealed as hollow. On the Council flagship, Commander Rathmill received orders from multiple governments. Some demanded he withdraw immediately. Some demanded he intensify attacks on Earth. Some demanded he negotiate. The Council was tearing itself apart. Agent Nari had infiltrated the flagship through a damaged section of hull. She moved through maintenance tunnels, past security checkpoints toward the central computer core. She had been trained for this. She was very good at what she did, but she had never attempted anything this difficult. She reached the core and began the installation. The device Colonel Daehyun had given her was small, barely larger than her thumb. It would tap into Council communications and send everything back to human intelligence. Almost done, she whispered to herself. Just 30 more seconds. Freeze, a voice said behind her. Council security had found her. Nari turned slowly. 5 guards, armed with weapons that could vaporize her instantly. She looked at the device in her hands. It was not fully installed yet. If she ran, it would not work. If she surrendered, the mission failed. So she did neither. She smiled at the guards and pressed the activation button. The device bonded to the core instantly, becoming part of the system. Then Nari raised her hands. I am Agent Nari of Earth Intelligence, she said, and I am your prisoner. The guards took her away. Daehyun would receive no more transmissions from her. But the device worked. Human intelligence suddenly had access to Council tactical networks. They could see enemy ship movements, read enemy communications, predict enemy strategies. The war had just become much more even. On Earth, Medic Dung. The war ended not with a great final battle, but with silence. On the 8th day of fighting, Commander Rathmill received a transmission from the Council's central authority. 3 simple words: withdraw immediately. He stared at the message in disbelief. Withdraw? After losing 69 ships? After committing to the destruction of humanity? After promising that resistance would be crushed? But the order was clear. Multiple Council homeworlds had been exposed to human attack. The truth about warred species had spread across hundreds of planets. 3 species had already declared independence. 8 more were threatening to do so. The Council was fracturing, and humanity was the hammer driving the wedge. Rathmill looked at Earth on his displays. The planet was wounded, scarred by orbital strikes, surrounded by debris fields that would take decades to clear. But it was still there. Still fighting, still refusing to surrender. All ships, he transmitted. We are withdrawing from Sol system. The operation is concluded. His officers protested. They had not won. How could they withdraw without victory? Rathmill had no answer except the truth. They had underestimated humanity. They had treated them like every other warred species, expected them to break and submit. Instead, humanity had shown them what desperation looked like when combined with innovation. The Council fleet turned and jumped away. 131 ships remained from the 200 that had arrived. They limped back to Council space carrying wounded pride and terrible losses. On Earth, people emerged from shelters and looked at the sky. The enemy was gone. Against every prediction, against all logic, humanity had survived. The cost had been terrible. 17 million dead, 5 cities destroyed, orbital infrastructure in ruins. But they were still free, still human, still themselves. Chancellor Minho addressed the planet from the rebuilt assembly chamber in Geneva. His face showed the weight of 8 days that had aged him 8 years. Behind him, the flags of Earth's nations hung tattered but proud. People of Earth, he began. People of humanity. We have survived. The Council came to destroy us, to force us into submission, to make us something less than we are. We said no. We paid the price for that answer. 17 million of our brothers and sisters will never see another sunrise. Their sacrifice will never be forgotten. He paused, looking directly at the cameras. But we are not done. This was not just about our survival. This was about showing the galaxy that the Council's authority is not absolute, that their power is not infinite. That species can choose freedom even if the cost is terrible. Around the solar system, humans listened to his words. On Mars, in the asteroid colonies on the moons of Jupiter, they had all been ready to die. Now they were learning to live again. Admiral Taejun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and looked at what remained of his fleet. 140 ships had survived from the 387 that had fought. Each ship carried empty spaces where crew members used to be. Each ship bore scars from weapons that should have destroyed them. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, we are receiving transmissions from Council space. Multiple species are asking for our help. Taejun raised an eyebrow. Help from us? They want to declare independence. They want to know if humanity will support them. If we will teach them how to fight like we did. Taejun thought about that. Humanity had barely survived. They had no resources to spare, no ships to send, no troops to deploy. And yet, how could they refuse? How could they tell other species to stay enslaved when humanity had been willing to die for freedom? Tell them, Taejun said slowly, that humanity will help any species that chooses freedom. We may not have much to give, but what we have we will share. Ambassador Hyerin had a new job now. She traveled toward species worlds, not as Earth's representative, but as humanity's voice. She spoke in assemblies and town squares, in government chambers and public parks. She told them what the Council did not want them to know, that ward status was permanent, that their populations would be controlled, that their cultures would be erased. And she told them about Earth, about the terrible price humanity had paid, about the choice they had made. She showed them footage of destroyed cities, of burning ships, of memorial walls listing 17 million names. This is what freedom costs, she said. This is what it means to say no to tyranny. We do not ask you to make the same choice. We do not demand that you fight. We only ask that you know the truth, and then decide for yourselves what kind of existence you want. On 43 ward species worlds, people listened, and on 12 of those worlds they began to organize. They began to question. They began to dream of freedom. The Council tried to suppress these movements. They sent enforcers, threatened sanctions, made examples of leaders, but the truth had spread too far. Humanity's desperate stand had shown that the Council could be resisted, that ward species did not have to accept their fate. Within 6 months, 3 species declared full independence. The Council threatened military action but found itself unable to act. Too many member species were questioning the system. Too many were demanding reforms. The consensus that had held the Council together for 100,000 years was breaking apart. Dr. Sun-hee became something she had never expected, a revolutionary figure. She traveled with Ambassador Hyerin, speaking not about politics but about biology and culture. She explained how the Council's mandatory sterilization programs were slowly erasing genetic diversity, how population controls were destroying species from within, how cultural suppression was killing what made each species unique. Her lectures were attended by thousands, broadcast to millions. The Council called her a terrorist. 12 ward species called her a hero. She did not care about either label. She only cared about truth. Back on Earth, the rebuilding began. Coordinator Jiwon oversaw the reconstruction of Melbourne, Cairo, Mumbai, and the other destroyed cities. It would take decades. Some of the damage could never be repaired. But humans were good at rebuilding. They had done it before after wars and disasters and catastrophes. They would do it again. She stood in what used to be central Melbourne, looking at the crater that had once been a city of 5 million people. The memorial being constructed here would list every name, every person who had died in the 8 days of war. A young girl named Bora approached her. She was one of the survivors, pulled from the rubble with burns covering half her body. Medic Dongyan had saved her life. "Ma'am," Bora said, "my teacher says we won the war, but it does not feel like winning." Jiwon knelt down to the girl's level. "No, it does not. Winning cost too much. But losing would have cost everything. We would have lost who we are. Would have lost the right to make our own choices. Your children would have been born into a world where someone else decided their fate. Will there be more wars?" Bora asked. "Maybe," Jiwon admitted. "The galaxy is watching us now. Some species admire what we did. Others hate us for it. The Council is wounded but not destroyed. They may try again, but next time we will be ready. Next time, we will not be alone." 6 months after the Battle of Seoul, Chancellor Minho convened a secret meeting. Representatives from 12 species attended, all of them ward species seeking independence. They met on Luna in a facility deep beneath the surface. "We are forming an alliance," Minho explained. "The Free Species Coalition. Its purpose is simple, to help any species that chooses freedom over submission. We will share technology, military support, and most importantly, solidarity. The Council maintained power by keeping us isolated. We maintain freedom by standing together." A representative from the Kelvin species spoke. They resembled humans but with copper-colored skin and 4 arms. "What if the Council attacks us like they attacked Earth? Then we fight together," Admiral Taejun responded. "Humanity has 140 warships. Not many compared to the Council, but enough to make them think twice. And we are building more. In 5 years we will have 500. In 10 years 1,000. The Council cannot fight all of us at once." Engineer Somin presented the technology sharing programs. "We will teach you how we built our ships, how we created weapons the Council could not counter. We're not asking for anything in return except that you share what you learn with other free species. Knowledge is the foundation of freedom." The Free Species Coalition was founded that day. 12 species signed the founding charter. Within a year, that number would grow to 23. Within 5 years, 41. The Council watched and worried. Their authority was crumbling. Their perfect order was dissolving into chaos. And at the center of it all was a single young species that had chosen death over submission and survived to tell about it. Agent Nari was released from Council prison as part of a negotiated exchange. She returned to Earth thin and scarred, carrying trauma that would never fully heal. Colonel Daehyun met her at the shuttle terminal. "Welcome home," he said simply. Nari looked at Earth through the viewport. The planet was damaged but healing, alive but scarred, like her. "Did we win, sir?" "Yes," Daehyun said. "But the war is not over. It has just changed form. The Council will not attack us directly again, but they will try other methods. Economic pressure, political isolation,